Welcome back to my studio. My name is Monica. If you've never been here before, we do a lot of watercolor and mixed media, journal play, and I like to nature journal too. So today I'm going to talk about how to get started in a nature journal and some ideas for laying out a spread and what my thought process is behind creating a spread. And we're going to create a spread in this journal. We're going to talk a little bit about how I've laid things out first, and then I'll show you how I am going to approach this next spread, which is going to be about spring and robins. And let's talk a little bit about what I've got going on here. I'm just going to thumb through a couple of these and explain my thought process behind these. So I knew that I wanted to journal about pigeons because I finally have pigeons in my yard, and I know a lot of people would probably say, I don't know why you're excited about that, but I have a ton of pigeons next door. I live next to a church, and I've never had them in my yard. And when I go for a walk with my dog, there is a house. He has feeders out, and that is where they all congregate. So I was kind of happy to see them in my yard. I actually think they're a beautiful bird, and they used to be revered because they would carry messages, especially during war. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, the demise of the pigeon. But I think they're beautiful. I don't care what kind of stigma is attached to them. And I wanted to journal. And then so this is my close-up, my focal point. And then I wanted to do the church next door because they all like to hang out at the very top. And they're just a lot of fun to watch. And so this was the jumping off point. And then I had the idea to put the church over here. I could have very well carried it over to this other side. And that might be something that I do in another spread. So this one is taken at the park, and this is when everything was blooming, and my focal point was this branch of wild plum, and I added in the landscape after, as I wasn't planning on doing that, but I thought it would be a great way to give this context because I was at the park down my street, and I balanced it out with some text. So these are the things that I'm thinking about when I lay out a journal spread. And I don't spend a ton of time, composing these. In fact, I do want to say, tip number one, you can absolutely do this organically. So if you have a nature journal that you're just getting started in and you're a little bit afraid, just pick something. Pick a flower, a twig, an animal, and just sketch it in. And then maybe the next time you come back, sketch in something else. And after a while, you'll have the page filled, or maybe you'll fill it up when you come back the second time. And we can talk about the different elements you can use to fill up a page. So text, definitely. You can use borders. You can use backgrounds. You can also use swatches. And this was part of a class that I did with Jean McKay. And we did some swatching, and this was all about the color yellow. And this, I think, is another great idea. So this is something else that you can do. Take a walk around your neighborhood and create a little map as a spread. And this was so much fun. And you can annotate the weather, you can annotate what you saw, think of the five senses, what you're seeing, what you're smelling, hearing, how it feels outside, how you feel. You can use this as a jumping off point for personal journaling as well. So you can swatch out an entire spread if that is what you so choose, and it makes a great, I think, addition to any nature journal. This was also a part of this class with Jean McKay, and this was about green. And there's something that I just really love about simplicity and one piece that takes up both pages. And that's kind of the direction I'm going to go today. So this I filled up an entire landscape, and this may look a little bit confusing, but this is a big rock shelf, and this is a path, and this was in the Catskills, and I added some text right here. I know exactly what it is, but I really wanted to capture the colors that I was seeing. It was just a lot of green, a lot of gray, and a lot of brown. It was beautiful. This page, I took some washi tape and I taped off all of these little boxes and used that as a way to annotate everything that I was seeing during my vacation in the Catskills. So I think something like this is a great way to start. You can create little boxes for yourself with tape, and then start with the big picture. Start with the landscape, and then in the smaller boxes, or the boxes that are around, you can annotate the flowers that you're seeing or the grasses. You can also just do a block like this, which is all the colors. The colors blew me away. There was it's a real green and a lot of moss and a lot of layering through the rocks. And you can also include some swatches of the colors that you were seeing. And I just went ahead and decorated the border with some pen. And then these are just more of a focal point, just one focal point. So this was when we were at Whetstone Gulf camping here in New York, and I have a ton of pictures, and I really love the folklore behind plants. So I wanted to annotate that with this Indian pipe. And that is not finished yet. And then I have this, which is some items that I found around my backyard. Now, in the wintertime here, it's pretty difficult to journal because there's so much snow on the ground. I think we are one of the snowiest locations in the country. We get sometimes 2 and 3 feet of snow at one time. So it can be difficult. But the reason I wanted to show you this page is that this is about as simple as it gets. So I have one plant that spans both pages and is the focal point. And then I went ahead and just added in some separate little pieces. And then I also added in some color swatches and the date. And this is your journal, so obviously you can add in anything that you want. You can even tape in, like I have this little twig on my desk. So I could tape this in here as well. And I think that might be something that I actually start doing. I love the, kind of the tactile kind of thing, you know. So here's some more. This was done at a workshop, and this is where we are right now. So I've got a blank page sitting in front of me, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm thinking and how I'm going to go about this process. So I have a friend that I want to say met her online, or our relationship has been on Facebook. And I have met her, I think, one time. She is a fabulous photographer, and she posted a photo. I have been trying to get a good photo of a robin, because to me, that's, you know, that signifies spring. Spring is here, the robins are out, and I could not get a good photograph. And she posted a beautiful photograph. And the reason that I love it so much is the robin, they're eating sumac. And one of the robins is really puffed up because it's still cold outside. And I thought, this is, this is perfect. That coupled along with a quote that I saw the other day, and it's by Charles Dickens, and it says, "Spring is the time of year when it is summer in the sun and winter in the shade." And that is like, sums it up perfectly, especially where I live. So that is my idea. That's my springboard for this spread that I'm going to do today. So here we go. We're going to start off with this robin up here. And when I'm sketching him, I'm looking at the direction of his back. And when you're sketching anything, you want to keep the lines light. So your best bet is to use, like, I think I'm using a 2B. That's not even very light. But if you use like an H or a 2H, that will definitely keep the line light. So I'm just putting in like the angle of his back, and then the head and his beak. I definitely want to make sure that I get the angle of his beak right. So so it's up like that. And then his big old puffed up self. And I'm making big shapes, big shapes, big shapes. We're not going to worry about details. I used to do that a lot. It was like I would try to slavishly copy something and start with the details first, and that just does not work. So always keep the shapes really big and general at first. And I feel like, yeah, I think that's okay. I don't think that's too big. So they're the focus anyway, so. Okay, so I'm going to get out my pen, and I'm going to finish refining this a little bit with my pencil, just so that I know where the eye placement is, and I have a good idea as far as the beak, and just make sure that I'm satisfied with the whole thing. But I'm probably going to speed this up through that part, and when I come back with the watercolor, I'll touch on some of the things that we're going to do with the watercolor. Okay, so I have finished with the Micron pens, and I went in, I did not draw solid lines. I kept it really sketchy, and it just, I think gives it kind of a sketchier feel. And not only that, it's a little bit easier if you've kind of maybe you didn't draw something correctly, or it's a little bit easier to fix when your lines are not dark solid lines. And I also think that when you outline something with a solid line, it flattens the image. So you could think of something like a coloring book. It's a little bit harder to get something to have some dimension to it if you've got it outlined in black. So keep that in mind. When you're using your pen, keep it on the side, and you can get a looser line. And also if you hold it towards the back, that will help. So I'm going to go in now and start adding some watercolor to this. And as I was, I'm going to make sure all my pencil lines are erased too. As I was finishing this up, I was thinking about going in and adding some more branches and twigs in here with my pen. And then I thought, better of that, I'm going to actually do that while with watercolor while this is wet. So the tricky thing about doing something like this is that I'm going to go in and paint around all of these shapes. And once my paint has kind of settled into the paper a little bit, I'm going to start adding in some indications of other branches and trees in the background. And I thought about keeping the background white, but the whole feeling from this photograph that she took and what I want to convey is that feeling of, spring is here, the robins are here, but it's still cold outside. It's, we're right on the cusp between winter and spring. And that's really what I wanted to convey. There are no leaves budding yet, and this robin is all puffed up. So that's how I'm going to approach this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I've got my brushes here. These are black velvet brushes. You can use anything that you want. In fact, when I'm outside, like if I go somewhere and I've got my little sketchbook, I use water brushes that are filled with water, and they don't have to be, you know, some epic paintbrush. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this area, and I need to get my water here. And when it comes to wet and wet, you have to, you know, gauge what the humidity is and your environment and the temperature and that kind of thing. That'll determine how quickly it dries. And my studio is really dry, so I have to work quickly. All right, okay, let's see. Hopefully that has stayed wet. We will find out in just a second. Okay, so that's good. And you can leave little gaps to indicate clouds. This is really dry already over here. And this is dry as well. So I've got to work really quickly. I just want to make sure that this gets all the way across before anything starts drying, so that it's like cohesive. And I want to make sure I get some back here as well, and down here. This is still pretty wet down here. I went into the tail a little bit, and that's not a big deal. Okay, so for the birds, since I already have this gray mixed up on my palette, the wings are a really, they're warm gray. I'm gonna keep the gray going. And I'm just gonna do a light wash, because the edges of the wings or the feathers are a little bit darker. So I'm gonna put in like an initial wash here, and that will be the light color, but I'm gonna just do a wash right over all of this. Okay, now we want to do the breast of the robin, which is a really beautiful orange. And I'm gonna start off with like the lightest color that I see, which is more into a yellow, which is right kind of at the bottom. But I'm gonna do a wash all over. And while it's wet, I'll add in a deeper orange around the the edge over here where it's in shadow. So for now, I think I'm finished with the birds. I'll go back in at the end and add in any extra little details or dark areas, like the highlight in the eye and those kind of things. But I think right now what I want to do is start on the sumac. And I'm going to find the lightest color in these pieces. And a lot of them are chewed up, and they're not as vibrant as they normally would be. And that's because of the time of year, obviously. So I'm going to start with probably a yellow ochre and just do a wash. And I think while I'm doing that, I'm going to do a wash of yellow ochre on the twigs as well, the branches. And then we'll add in some other colors. I'm going to get rid of some of this gray I've got on my palette because there's a lot of blue in it, and mixed with yellow, we don't want green. So I'm going to get rid of some of that. And I don't want it quite so yellow, so I'm going to add just like a smidge of purple in there because that's the complement. So this kind of knocks it back and makes it not so saturated. And like I said, I'm going to do a wash on all of the twigs, and I'm going to go right over all of this sumac as well, because there's a really light yellow that I'm seeing, and I want to get that in as like the base layer. Now maybe while this is wet, I'll drop in a little bit of this red, and I'm gonna use, I think this is a mine red if I'm not mistaken. And I might even go into some of this Venetian red too. I'm going to start laying in a little bit of a little bit more of a reddish tone, darker brown for, it's a little bit darker than I wanted, for the shadows. And it's not even really shadow, it's just the branch has a really reddish, warm mid-tone, which is like, you know, kind of the local color of the branch, but I want to leave some of these yellow bits kind of poking through. And if I work quickly enough, I can actually drop in a shadow while this is wet. I'll just grab some of this burnt umber, and then I'll help it bleed out. I'm gonna leave these little areas at the top of on the sides of the branch. I'm gonna leave those as light colored as I can. And I'm not gonna be too fussy with these branches. My biggest thing was making sure that they were warmer than the background. That way, that's where our focus is. So what I'm looking at looks a little bit green to me. So I can always grab a little bit of blue and add it into my mix. And most of this is pretty dark. And then we start getting into the shadow areas here. And I think I am gonna kind of push that into a purple. So I have this really nice, I think this is amethyst. And all of my paints are Daniel Smith. You don't have to use Daniel Smith paints when you're in your nature journal. You can do pretty much whatever you like. And I can always go back on top of this with some more red, which is what I'm gonna do. And this area is just really dark down here in some of these areas. So I think I'm pretty much done. And the last thing that I want to do before I add in my text is I'm going to pop a few highlights in here. So I have some Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, and mine has pretty much solidified. That really doesn't make a difference. Just re-wet it and you're good. I usually work out of the lid, and I am going to add the highlight into the bird's eye. The thing is, with the bird's eye in the photograph that I'm looking at, you know, it's not completely white. So I'll add in a little bit of gray just to dull it down a little bit because it's not completely white. So, and I'll just add in a little highlight like that. And actually the bird at the bottom, there's really not much of a highlight, but I'm gonna put one in, just a small one like that. And I might re-emphasize these rings around their eyes just a little bit. And then he's got some white right there too. Now I'm gonna pop in a few highlights on the Sumac, and I am gonna add a little bit of red. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. And the last thing that I want to do is I want to add in that quote that I talked about earlier. And I'm not going to eyeball it. I'm going to actually grab my ruler, lay in some lines. I'll see how many lines I think I'll need. And it's going to be tricky because this doesn't want to lay flat right here. So I'll do the best that I can. And I will pencil in the text first, and then more than likely I'll go in with a Micron pen and add in the wording. I'll also make some other notes down here, and that'll pretty much be the finish for this spread. So here we go. So I have finished up the text, and I actually stepped away from it for about a day or so, and then came back and ended up adding a little bit of gold into the inside of some of those letters, and I also thickened up the lines on the letters. They were just a little bit too thin. And what else did I do? I added some ink into the Sumac on both sides. And I think that's pretty much it. I like this spread. I think it turned out really nice, and I had been wanting to paint robins for a while, and then Judy's beautiful photograph showed up on my Facebook feed, and she was kind enough to let me borrow it. And if you want to check out her photograph, she's an amazing photographer. You can go to her website. It's wiseandie.com, and I will leave that in the description box below. So if you had a good time with this and you want to hang out here a little bit more with me, I've got a new video upload every week. We'll do all sorts of different things. I like to do a lot of journal play, nature entries, and especially watercolors. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to get notifications when a new video drops. Thanks for being here. I hope you had a good time, and I hope this inspired you to get out there and start your own nature journal. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.